Keith McBee. Keith McBee.
I will defer to that. Very briefly, Section 8.1.3.2, MSDSs and trade secrets. There is nothing wrong with having a trade secret where the health of the population is not involved. There should be no trade secrets with regard to potentially toxic substances. The public should have the right to know, consider, and examine every chemical to which we are even potentially exposed. This should be a fundamental human right, not subject to the needs of private companies for secrecy. I will now defer to the many eloquent speakers who have spoken against this potentially disastrous process. It seems to me that potentially disastrous should be enough. Fukushima power plant was potentially disastrous. Ban fracking now.
Yeah. Thank you. Enrico Purita.
Hi, my name is Enrico Purita. I'm an organizer for NYPIRG, but I speak here as an individual. And I think the biggest flaw in this process, this whole process of drafting the DEC HEarings, besides the elitism, the classism, and the lack of transparency that existed in it, is just the lack of education or input from any of the people who are actually being affected by the fracking. Instead, Cuomo's commission was comprised of industry experts and environmental sellouts like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. So I think, if that's your job, if your job is to expedite the drilling process, you're doing a great job. But, I know I can't ask questions, but I think your job should be to educate. And there seems to be a lack of education on the process itself. Everyone who is subject to drilling ought to be educated by the DEC, because I think if anyone who's affected, who's about to lease their land, was informed about radioactivity, the non-disclosure agreements, loss of farmland, loss of property value, I think they would think twice. But the fact is there isn't that education. We're depending on the industry education. They're depending on the commercials that they see in between football games. They're not getting it from you guys. And you guys have that power. You have the power to set an example for the rest of the country. New York can be a leader in renewable energy, solar power, wind power, farming, tourism and agriculture are our biggest industries. It's never been fossil fuels. So I ask you guys to consider the impact not only on the entire state, but the rest of the country. We could be doing so much more in New York, so much more innovative. We have the potential to be so much more innovative than fracking. So, I ask you guys before you go to sleep tonight, just to remember who you're protecting. Are you protecting them? Are you protecting these guys? Or are you protecting the 1%, the industry insiders? Are you allowing them to have a greater voice than, the public? Is this a democracy? Is this entire process democratic? As the gentleman before me stated, why are we appealing to you? You should be appealing to us. There should be a vote. There should be a democratic vote in New York State to decide whether or not this happens. And the fact is, it's not going to happen that way, but it should. Why is there a time limit? Why is there some guy with a bell over there? None of it makes sense. This entire process doesn't make sense, and we should reevaluate it, scrap the DEC HEarings, and ban fracking.
Okay. Betsy DeWitt, it's 9 o'clock. We have this room for a little bit longer, so we're going to keep going.
Hi. I also don't like public speaking, but I'm scared, and that's why I'm here. Okay, my name is Betsy DeWitt, and I'm a mother of 3, and I'm here to represent for my children and my future grandchildren, hopefully. I live in Flushing, Queens, but for the last 50 years, I have summered at my family's cabin in northeastern Pennsylvania. 2 summers ago, I was horrified to witness what has happened to this once beautiful rural area because of hydrofracturing. They are pulling millions of gallons of water out of the Susquehanna River and poisoning it with chemicals. And then, how do they dispose of it? Your answer is as good as anybody's. The gas and water trucks are creating hazards as they speed up and down local roadways. At the time, I had no clue what hydrofracturing was, but luckily for me, I came home and I started talking about it to somebody else, and they said, watch the movie Gasland, and they immediately put it on for me. And I said, shit, what is happening to our world that people are allowing this to happen? Okay, I recently returned from Italy, where I also live. And the town I live in there, their water is poisoned. And it's necessary for us to go on a daily basis and get water and bring it home from a filtration system in the town. Now, mind you, that's a small town. It's maybe 8,000 to 10,000 people, but everybody in that town is unable to drink their tap water, and they're basically required to go and bring water home. Now, what's gonna happen if we frack New York State? And 15 million people, where are they going to go and bring their jugs of water home on a daily basis? This is what scares me, and this is what scares me for my children and everybody in New York State. And people need to know, and you need to educate them about the process. And God bless this young man who just spoke before me, that they're willing to get up and talk about this stuff and learn, and we need to get out there and we need to educate everybody, because this is a really scary world we're living in if we allow the gas companies to control what happens to our futures and to our children's futures. Thank you.
Thank you. Wendy Robinson.
Wendy Robinson. I have a home in White Lake, New York. I'm an attorney with 35 years of experience in the commodities industry. My first post-law school employment was with the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. It was 1980, and the Hunt brothers had just crashed the economy with a silver market manipulation that was unprecedented. Over the course of my career in the public and private sectors of the commodities industry, I have witnessed repeated incidences of insiders making a mockery of regulations. For every rule I helped design at the CFTC, clever industry professionals found a way around them to create new bubbles that burst and wreaked havoc on our financial system. It is clear that the SGEIS has not addressed this possibility, never mind the likelihood that if New York moves forward with fracking, commodities professionals will see another trading opportunity that will become the same roller coaster ride of all the other bubbles that eventually burst. So this will be our next Enron, or credit default swap nightmare, requiring bailouts of all those too-big-to-fail Wall Street firms that dupe investors into believing they will reap millions on their wells, only to have those wells produce far less, or perhaps even none, of the latest promised fool's gold. One of the regulations we repeatedly revised at the CFTC related to the disclosure of risks investors would face. Similar rules in the securities industry led Chesapeake Energy to include the following admissions in its 2009 annual report. I quote, "Natural gas and oil operations are subject to many risks, including well blowouts, cratering and explosions, pipe failures, fires, formations with abnormal pressures, uncontrollable flows of natural gas, oil, brine, or well fluids, and other environmental hazards and risks. Our drilling operations involve risks from high pressures and from mechanical difficulties, such as stuck pipes, collapsed casings, and cables. If any of these risks occurs, we could sustain substantial losses as a result of injury or loss of life, severe damage to or destruction of property, natural resources, or equipment, pollution or other environmental damage, cleanup responsibilities, regulatory investigations, and administrative, civil, and criminal penalties, and injunctions resulting in limitation or suspension of operations." One of the reasons we have seen, end quote, one of the reasons we have seen radical swings and bubbles bursting in the various commodities is not just because the regulations haven't been comprehensive enough, but because the penalties are an insufficient deterrent. The SGEIS and proposed regulations follow the same pattern. You can adopt regulation after regulation, but until the penalties to which the gas industry would be subject include strict liability and mandatory prison sentences, you will never see sufficient incentive for compliance with those regulations. You'll have the type of settlements the SEC just attempted to negotiate with Citigroup, $200 million in change for transgressions that netted them hundreds of billions in profits. So that means there will be a bubble, but that also means there will be illness and death. Please tell us, how many illnesses and death will you find acceptable? Please tell us how many New Yorkers' lives you're willing to sacrifice. This must not be done in our name.
Thank you. Dimitar Lukanov. Dimitar Lukanov.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Dimitar Lukanov, and I'm a sculptor. I own land in Schoharie County. You understand, you see the accent. I've been all over the world. The most beautiful place I've ever been, it's upstate New York. There's nothing like this. The best eggs, the best milk, the best butter, the best meal. Anything you could dream of. This is the best kept secret in the world. I live near a village with not one, 4 medicinal waters. The Indians, thousands of years ago, used it. There's a huge potential for tourism, not to speak of agriculture. I'm very, very concerned with the proposal. I look at it, I try to understand, to comprehend. It's not about Republicans and Democrats. It's not about rich and poor. It's not about black and white. It's not about newcomers or natives. It's not about urban or upstate people. It's only about health in the end. Everything else could be fixed. Health and the danger to it is irreversible. My parents are doctors, neurologists. They visited me this summer. They cannot comprehend this at all. They came from a communist country where there was, obviously a dictate on what has to be done. In a country where jaywalking is punished, poisoning the water is, shall we say, green-lighted. How I can explain this to my 8-year-old father who saved thousands of lives in my native country of Bulgaria. As an American citizen and as a citizen of New York State, I respect your efforts to draft this. It probably took some energy to do this, but please revise it, please look at it, and at least what we can do is to follow the sister organization, the Federal Department of Environmental Protection, that's going to come in 2014 with its report. That's my suggestion to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lukanov. Jane Cyphers.
Good evening. My name is Jane Cyphers, and I've been working on this fracking issue for almost 4 solid years. I've also been a teacher since 1978, so I know you mentioned you have a son in 1st grade, so. It's a good thing the kids can't vote, because poisoning water is really unpopular with children. When you read the faces of the children whose farms have been contaminated, who have watched their friends and their family get ill and their animals get sick and die in pain, it's really tough, Collateral damage is not something that children see themselves as, and their animals, but yet this is how the gas drilling industry actually stated it from one document I read, that there will be collateral damage, but collateral damage are real lives, and they affect people, and all that is something that we need to think about. So you know, although our children will be stuck with the mess that the fracking industry hands them, they must watch commercial after commercial on TV that the multi-billion-dollar gas industry pays for that shows pictures of teddy bears and Christmas trees. These Christmas trees that are all lit up nice and bright, they could be running on solar power and wind power and biofuel. And you know, a child might ask the question, does the DEC work for the 1% or the 99%? You know, I need everybody to get their pens out because I need you to write down this email. I'll give you a second. I just want to let you know that I hope that New York State will become the Emerald State. And I hope that New York State, the New York Environmental Protection Agency will not go the route of the PADEP. Because Cabot Oil and Gas has just removed replacement water for all of the families in Dimock, PA. And so here's the email, CLS Craig, C-R-A-I-G, Stevens @earthlink.net. I just received this message from Trissa Lessig, the producer of Gasland, and she had just received an email from Julian Craig Saltner, which states, the water deliveries are stopping today to our farm and our friends in Dimock, and we are coordinating we're trying to get donations, and we're trying to get water trucks and drivers, and maybe if you know any drivers, sir, or any way to get some water to them, New York State would, I think your son would probably really appreciate that.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to call the following speakers. If you have already spoken, please leave the front row. If not, please remain and you'll be called shortly. Whitney Thies, Richard Lind, Nancy Romer, Martha Cameron, Janine Wilk, Gwen Hughes, Lou Wright, and Stephanie Lowe.
I'll be calling Daniel Carpin up next to the microphone. Thank you, Harold. There you go.
My name is Daniel Carpin, K-A-R-P-E-N. I reside at 3 Harbor Hill Drive, Huntington, New York. I'm a licensed professional engineer. My specialty is energy conservation engineering. The DEIS has never proven that there is a public need for fracking in New York State. There is no shortage of natural gas. In fact, there is a huge shortage of energy conservation. In 1973, the oil crisis, energy crisis, hit the country. I go into buildings in New York City which waste enormous quantities of gas. 50% of the attics in buildings in Queens and Brooklyn have less than 2 inches of insulation. My recommendations now are 16 inches of insulation in attics and roofs. This New York State Energy Conservation Construction Code in 1979 required insulation of steam lines in residential buildings. The 2010 New York State Energy Conservation Construction Code does not require steam lines to be insulated in buildings that are undergoing renovation where a building permit is required. The whole code should be changed to require that every house built in New York State be built to passive standards that would not require any heat whatsoever. To do it, you go R80 in the roof, R40 in the walls, R7 windows, and you virtually don't have to heat it all year long. There is a huge waste of energy in New York State facilities, the colleges, the universities, the jails, the state agencies themselves, the DEC buildings.
The state-funded agencies, for example, school districts in New York State use lots of gas to heat the buildings. There's enormous amounts of waste. Why? Oversized boilers that are cooling off between cycles. Steam pressure that is set way too high. Bad steam traps that allow steam to pass through systems. Uninsulated steam lines. I see lots of opportunities for energy conservation in New York. I see a need for wind turbines to be installed so we don't have to burn natural gas to generate electricity. I see that these comments, this material in my 3 minutes is not in the EIS. The New York State needs to update its energy master plan to ban fracking so we don't need it. The restaurants in New York State are very wasteful in terms of how they use gas for cooking. I eat mostly raw food that doesn't require natural gas for its preparation.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. Next speaker is Jean Rowe, R-O-H-E. Jean, R-O-H-E. No, not her. Whitney Theis, T-H-E-I-S? Nope. Richard Lind.
Okay. Hi, I'm Richard Lind. I live in Forest Hills, Queens.
Yeah, microphone. Closer to the mic. Thanks.
So about a half a century ago, a company called GE polluted the Hudson River. They've been sued. They still haven't paid the appropriate amount to clean up that mess. To this day, I'm told that if I eat more than a pound of striped bass in a month, I'm at risk of developing cancer from PCPs. The politicians and the officials in the time said, we didn't know. Well, that's not the case now. Okay, Governor Cuomo and all of the officials, but especially Governor Cuomo, needs to understand that this problem is going to fall squarely on his head. This is the age of the internet, everyone knows. If Mr. Cuomo does not know how to Google the words fracking and Anthony Ingrafia, fracking and West Gillingham, methane gas drilling and Robert Howarth or Alexander Appleton, if he can't do this and understand what the rest of New Yorkers are working to prevent in our great state, then maybe he doesn't deserve to be governor. We, the people, have written to him. We've called his office. We've testified here. In fact, some very credible, very believable, and understandable people have testified. He cannot, in fact, no official can, say that they don't know of the real dangers and risks to New York and that we don't want this, that we will not have this. Okay. And we won't forget when it comes time to vote for his office, okay? We will vote him out. And we will keep him far from the White House, too. But look, he's the governor now, so we'll give him this respect, okay? If he clearly acts, okay, to protect the people in New York, okay, from this horrible proposal, okay, if he acts as is his duty, okay, to keep gas company executives away from our water supply, our land, our clean air, and bans fracking in New York, then we will rally behind him. We'll love him for the leader he could be. And we'll send him as close to the White House as he wants to go. But he's got to be careful, okay? We are paying attention. We want to ban fracking. We don't want this in our state. Get rid of fracking now. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Romer. Nancy Romer? No. Martha Cameron. Martha Cameron. Jean Wilkie. Gwen Hughes. All right.
Good evening. I'm no one important. I'm a retired teacher. I'm a grandmother. And when you see me standing here, you don't see one grandmother, you see hundreds of grandmothers. Grandmothers that are frightened, they're angry, they're worried, they're concerned. For whom? Themselves, yes, but for their children and for their grandchildren. I'm not going to speak to all the things I wanted to say because everyone has said it so much better. You're just wonderful, all of you. And you've spoken so well. But I would like to say that hydrofracking, sir, is short-sighted at best, and at worst, it's immoral. I would call to your attention the article in the New York Times Magazine.
We will give her more time. I'm sorry, I was just trying to find something out on a card, but go ahead. We will stop the clock. We will give her more time. By the way, we got to be out of here at 10 o'clock, so you're eating into your own time right now. I wasn't interrupting her. You guys did. All right? Go ahead. Okay, we'll wait. We'll wait. Just wait. Okay, everybody, we'll just wait. Pipe down. I'm fine.
Stop. Everyone, stop. Stop.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. You have nothing to apologize for. Go forward.
I came here, I'm going to have to start a little bit over, I'm sorry. I came here to ask you for help. You've been subjected to a lot of anger, concern, fear, worry, whatever. My name is Gwen Hughes. I live in Rye, New York. I'm a retired teacher. But most importantly, I'm a grandmother. And I'm not just one grandmother standing here looking at you. I am many grandmothers. Many grandmothers that have great concern about this hydrofracking that is being brought into our state. I refer you to, which I'm sure you've read, the New York Times article of 11/20 in the New York Times Magazine about the travesty that is going on in Pennsylvania. At best, hydrofracking is short-sighted, and at worst, it's immoral. I'm not going to be redundant about all the things everyone said. I was complimenting them on how well they've spoken and said all the things I was concerned about. Public health, lack of local controls, the fact that we haven't thoroughly researched the cumulative effect of hydrofracking, all of these various issues. But what really is a tragedy is that after hydrofracking is done, what are we left with? The first year, there are great lot of money made, a great deal. And then gradually over the next 2 or 3 years, the gas supply goes down. And we're left with a brown field. We're left with waste, we're left with pollution, land that cannot be used. It is a tragedy. And the gas companies, they're going to get profits. I'm not going to profit. The grandmothers of this state are not going to profit, but we're going to lose our clean air, our clean water, the beauty of New York State. 77,000 wells are proposed for the Finger Lakes, one of the most beautiful areas of the state, one every quarter mile. It's disgusting, it's tragic, it's sad. I need your help. The grandmothers need your help.
Thank you. Lou Wright.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Lou Wright. I'll speak briefly on behalf of the student group or New School from the New School here in New York. We come with the simple message that we as students want a full ban on fracking and won't tolerate that kind of behavior in our state. And now I'd like to say something else on my own behalf, which is no amount of regulation will make hydrofracking a good economic proposal. You can make it safe, maybe. I don't really believe that, but you can't make it good for people. And worse, we, and I think a lot of students in this state, are sick of the government leaning on this lie that it's an issue of environment versus jobs. We know it's not true. We know that the 10 biggest gas-producing counties in New York in the mid-2000s had higher unemployment rates and lower median household incomes than their neighboring non-gas-producing counties. We know that was the truth in Chemung and Schoharie and Cattaraugus. We know that was what's going on. And I'm telling you, this is not about how I feel about the future, my beliefs, my speculation. Not everyone has the time to be an environmental activist. This is about basic economics. And I'm telling you from where I'm from. Down in Louisiana, down in Cancer Alley, where Cajun boys working on rigs have to measure their job security in months and years, when their daddies who worked in fisheries and shrimp boats could measure their job security in decades. Just like young men who are going to work on wellheads here, if they can even get jobs, are going to have to measure that by how long a well stays open, when their daddies who worked on farms could measure their job security in decades. That is not right. And we've seen it happen in landscapes all over the country. It's not about speculation, it's not about the future, it's about what has already happened. And you come with me down to Cancer Alley, down to Southeast Louisiana Delta, and I will show you all the rich, happy, well-employed people. I'll show you all the beautiful landscapes full of jobs that they created with the extractive industries and all the fracking waste we got from East Texas. It does not do any good for a state. And if it happens here, the legacy of the Cuomo administration will be economic ruin. It will not be an issue of, oh, we created jobs, maybe we did a little environmental damage. It will be economic ruin. It will be a problem for our state's economy, and we as students graduating into this bullshit economy will not tolerate more bullshit.
All right, all right,
Thank you.
All right.